Hi, Leslie.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. Look at you. You always look good.
Go ahead, Kai. All right, should we
Hi,
start?
Kai. So Kai is Bernadette your aunt is or cousin?
She's my aunt, actually, my mom's sister. But yeah, so I'm Kai Sood. That's my aunt, Bernie Mastrangel. And we're so happy to welcome you. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
you've done so much. You've done charitable work. You're Emmy nominated for your work as a journalist, and now you're running for city councilwoman. And you've even in your city done so much for the people that live there. So
Thank you, Kai. That's really nice of you to say.
yeah. So my first question would be, you've done so much in your career, whether it be journalism, charitable works, or your present run for city council. What has your journey been throughout life? And have you always known that you would one day want to be a journalist and someone that worked in charity and now a politician?
That's actually a really good starting off question because I reflect on that sometimes myself, actually. So you're very intuitive. Um, I, oh, it's funny. When I was young, my parents instilled in me. My parents came from I wouldn't say poverty, but they were poor immigrants. That was their family. And as each generation went on, it was upwardly mobile. We got a little better and a little more well off. But I think the foundation, Kai, was still that do better for others, right? Even if you're doing better for yourself, you still give back because that's what let you become who you are today. So I think I have to give props to my parents on that one because they instilled that with me and my brother. Now, taking that, I wanted to in college be a lawyer. And you're probably like, lawyer, then how'd you become a journalist? So I always wanted to become a lawyer. And then when I was at college at Temple University in Philadelphia, I got an internship at a local television station doing sports. And I was an athlete in college and I loved sports. I fell in love with it. I just fell in love with the interviewing. I fell in love with the researching. I fell in love with all of it. And even though I was pre-law, I saw there were some parallels with journalism, like kind of getting to the root of problems, speaking for people who couldn't speak for themselves. There were a lot of, like I said, parallels. So I started off on journalism. My first job was at ESPN in Bristol, Connecticut.
Love that.
And then it just went from there. So I've been a journalist pretty much my whole life. And now entering, I guess, politics, you would say, is just something new. I've never been a politician
So
before.
cool. Leslie, have you ever written a book or thought about writing a book?
It's funny you should ask that. I have thought about writing a book, but not something that you might think.
Okay.
I'm very close with my family. And my three uncles were in World War II. World War II. One
Okay.
was in the Army, one was in the Navy, and one was in the Air Force. They've all since passed, but I knew them very well, and we were very close growing up. So I always wanted to write a World War II book, which you wouldn't think. It's not something you think, but I'm interested in that time in history just because of my connection with my family had to it.
I love that. Okay, so I have the next question. You grew up in Queens, born and grew up in New York. So how did that affect your feelings about running for office and helping your community?
Yes, my dad grew up in Queens.
Oh,
I
okay.
grew up in New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad grew up in Queens.
Okay.
So I do have ties to New York City and my family is here. Um, like I was telling Kai, I never thought about it. Like I never thought about running for office. I just thought about, hey, I'll volunteer here and I'll volunteer there. Like Bernadette, you do too, right? You
I
do
love
the same thing. We all have like our moments, right, of volunteering. We want to give back.
What made you like level up and say, actually, like the politician, like, I volunteer, but you are more into volunteering for politics now, or,
Yeah.
lead.
So I'll give you one is the philosophical reason, and then one was kind of like the jumping off point. So the philosophical reason, I think, is that the more I got involved, the more I saw that wow, like it really matters when you get involved. Like you can really like know what the decision making is. You really have an impact. because and this is the sadder part of it, not many people get involved. So the people who do have a larger voice.
Okay.
So I said, wow, a lot of these residents, they have really good thoughts and opinions on how they want their neighborhood to be, right? So I want to kind of represent us, the residents, and take it to the higher level, like you mentioned.
Cool.
But I think the igniter was, I was at a local meeting, and Kathy Hochul, who is the lieutenant governor, was speaking. And this was just the beginning of 2020. And she said, you've got to get involved, especially women. Women have to get involved. They have to, mothers and women, because those are the ones that have the great ideas and the great ingenuity, and the ones that are probably least likely to run for office. So I think couple those two things together, and I guess that's where I am now.
I love that. Great inspiration.
Yeah, she was great. She was wonderful.
That's truly amazing. So you worked as a journalist, and as a journalist, how do you feel your words made a difference? Do you feel like, what difference do you feel your words made, and what do you consider the best parts of journalism being?
So when I started, like I said, in sports, and I was very fortunate because I worked at ESPN and then CNN, and these are outfits that have a really wide reach, right? And I got to do some great stories, and in sports, I got to do a lot of investigative stories. But in sports, it's really not, to me, I thought I wasn't being as impactful as I could. So to your point, Kai, I was like, okay, I'm a beat writer, I'm a beat reporter. I go to the next NFL game or the NBA game, and it was fun. And it was great. And you traveled all over, but the meaning wasn't there for me. So my last job was investigative reporting, where I went all around the world. And that is where I think I had the biggest impact, because I did stories on wind power and how it could change, a whole society. I did stories on, I'll give you one example, how I think my stories made an impact, if not for others, at least for me. I did a story on children going to prison and for life without parole. And it was such an emotional story that afterwards, when I got out of that, I decided to help fight that, help the children have a second chance.
Where was that?
I'm sorry?
Where was that located in?
So it's in the United States, but mostly in the southern states. The Supreme Court has since said that's not, you can't do that anymore. If you're a child, you have to at least have a chance to have parole.
Yes.
And not to get heavy, but it really helped shape me as far as seeing all these kids and what they were going through. And I just kind of went into action and tried to help. And one of them, actually, a few years ago, we got his sentence reduced. So it was really impactful for me.
Was this before you had a child, or after that you did the work?
This was before. This was before Cecilia.
Yeah.
Or right when Cecilia was born, we were still going through it. But
that is so beautiful. I'm inspired.
Thanks.
Also, your charitable work is really astounding. I mean, whether it be your work for the Young Center for Immigrants' Children's Rights, or your help and relief for tsunamis in Sri Lanka, what brought you to the charity work that you did, and what do you consider your greatest accomplishment in that field?
Oh, wow. It's funny. Bernie and I, we talk about this, about doing charity work and how important it is to give back. And this is the one thing that makes me feel uncomfortable about running for office, is that you have to broadcast it so much. George Steinbrenner had this quote, ironically, the former owner of the Yankees, that if more than two people know you did something, you did it for the wrong reasons. And I always thought that, you do something good just because you want to do it, right? Yeah. Not because 50 million people know you did it. So that's kind of like but I'm getting over that because I understand it actually, it helps. It spotlights your cause and it spotlights that you're, the charity you're doing, you're working for. But I think there's a few favorites, but you touched upon it. I think when we built and created a lemonade stand right in Columbus Circle for little kids to sell lemonade, and all the proceeds went to immigrant children who were separated from their parents at the border and to help for their legal aid. That was probably something that was near and dear to my heart, because we mobilized neighborhood children, we introduced them to service, it was for a good cause, or a cause at least that I believed in. And we really got to know our neighbors. I mean, we were selling lemonade for $1 a little cup, and we made thousands of dollars in one day. So, and then we sent it all, like you said, we sent it to actually New York Cares and the Young Center.
Oh, I love that so much.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun too.
When was that, Leslie?
That was 2 summers, not last summer, 3 summers ago. Summer of, what are we,
2018?
Yep.
Wait.
You're right. No, you're right. You're right. 2018.
Yeah, you guys should do it again this summer.
Yeah, we were going to do it this past summer, but then, of course, with COVID.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my next question. You continue to serve on Community Board 4, a group in New York that advocates for and helps District 4 before and throughout COVID. So what major issues are you seeing right now, especially that you want to focus on flight from the beginning as a city councilwoman?
So I'm breaking this down, I think, to the 4 major issues. So pre-COVID and during COVID, it's a very, very different landscape here in New York City, and especially our district. So I think if you asked me this a year ago, my answers would be different.
Yes.
But right now, I think first and foremost, on our road to recovery, and listen, the vaccine is coming. We know we're going to be on our road to recovery. We could see it. We see the light at the end of the tunnel, but there's going to be a lot of aid and help to do for us to get there. And my first priority, or one of my first 4 priorities, is small businesses, including restaurants, hospitality, and the arts. And I put the arts in there only because, though it's not technically a small business, they were probably one of the most hardest hit communities, along with small businesses in restaurants and hospitality. Second is education. What this has shown us here with COVID is that our public school system are being it's been a mess here. It's really been a mess as far as how the city has handled public school and especially distance learning during COVID. The third is, people say quality of life. Some other people call it public safety, but I think that's really, really important these days. And I'm not shying away from that. I do think it's important for people to be safe or feel safe where they live. Yes. And, to have a nice home. I mean, that's, people, when they're at home or where they live, they want to be able to call it their home and to feel safe and to be able to walk outside and it not be filled with trash, or to feel safe going from, one corner to the next at night. I think those, let me see, what was there was a fourth one. Then I have like transportation equity and environment, but I would say those 3, and then there's a bottom tiers.
Right. We definitely, those are all very important to me. That's why I so much support you. It really is. I mean, the safety issue, that is really something that is very serious, especially having a kid, where,
absolutely.
I'd be frightened to have my daughter go walk around in the neighborhood.
And even the elderly. It goes all the way up to, like it's a lot of older people I'm hearing that they don't feel comfortable walking outside right now.
Right. Interesting. Go ahead, Kai.
You also currently serve on CB4's Budget Task Force, the Hudson River Parks Pier 40 and 76 Task Force, and you're also an active member of your local NYPD Community Council, which works toward better community policing. So obviously you're very involved. So did this help compel you to run for office? And what role does this play in what you want to do? and how you want to shape New York as a city councilman.
Yeah, it absolutely shaped my my willingness and my vision for running for office, absolutely, without a doubt, because you see how things are being done, and you see. So when you mentioned the budget task force, that is a group, a small group of people on the community board who are now also on the budget task force. And what we do is we have no power of the purse, but what we do is we prioritize
Okay.
Our district needs, and that could be anything from education to transportation to environment, and we prioritize them, and we kind of work the budget, and then we hand it into the local elected officials and say, this is what our communities, our residents are saying that they need and want, as a priority list from 1 all the way down. So I think, Kai, that it definitely helped me understand the landscape better. It makes me very intimately involved in the inner workings of, why would you choose this and not this, or why would we put money towards here and not there? So I think, yes, that definitely formed my viewpoint moving ahead, as well as being on the Hudson River Park Task Force.
Oh,
I
cool.
mean, I'm an environmentalist at heart, so that's more one that I just love to be on, because we're forming new spaces that we can all in the city use along the river. There's so much unused space there. You'll be surprised.
Oh, I love that whole project, Leslie. Like, I
It's
would
so
love
great.
to hear the insight.
They do. I got to tell you, I'm just on the task force as far as like a resident voice,
Yes.
but the credit goes to the people at the Hudson River Park Task. They're wonderful. I mean, it's such a great group, and they work so hard, and they work so well on that whole Hudson River side to make it beautiful for us.
I feel like they love their park the way the Highline people love their park.
Yes,
You know, like you
exactly.
see like a true love. They even have like a little area that's a garden, because I go running by there, and the gardeners, they did a vegetable garden during summer, and then they are growing some bushes right now, and it's lovely to go by. And this is just
Isn't
their,
it?
you know, like this is
And
like,
they have, I mean, they have free canoe people. They have free canoeing. They have pieces of art that are, temporary and permanent that are there. I mean, they have some great little dog runs nearby. There's so much along the river that we don't. I mean, there are children's programs that you can go, that you can sign up for.
there's a fishing. Hey, Leslie, what was I going to ask you? What are they going to do with the police? They're moving out, I heard, this month.
So that's one of the task force I'm on, is the tow pound. So that tow pound has been there forever, and it has been, I guess, an endeavor of Governor Cuomo and a bunch of residents so that's such a valuable piece of real estate, right?
Huge.
It's right on the water, and we have this ugly big garage there, this tow pound, and which can be anywhere, right? It could be in any, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a aesthetically pleasing place. So to move the tow pound out of there, I've there have been many people before me that have worked very long and hard on that, and I'm coming now in the back end here, because we want to reimagine that space, whether it should be a field, ball fields, whether it should be a learning centers, whether it should be maybe a restaurant there. I think they have a little beach area they actually have there, they're planning. So, that's been a long time coming, and we're trying to move them out. So hopefully it's sooner rather than later.
They're going to move out the end of the month? I think.
You know what they keep saying. So yes, the NYPD has to, and the city have to identify a place for the tow pound to go, and they have identified a few places, or maybe split them up instead of one big tow pound, do one in each borough. That idea has been bandied about. But yeah, it's just really identifying a place, forcing them to move it out, and then kind of reinvent that space.
Wonderful. You'll have to keep me up to date on that.
Absolutely.
I can't wait for it to be really.
I will say the things that compelled you to run are just amazing. And as you mentioned earlier, for you on the Hudson River Parks Pier 40 and 76 Task Force, you are a citizen's voice, and that's something that you'll bring to the office that you hold. You you live there. You've been there during the hardest time in its history. So it really is that a goal of yours, to bring a citizen's voice to the table, to bring someone that really has seen that area in its best and in COVID and in all of it, really.
Yeah, Kai, I'm gonna get you to work on my campaign because that's exactly what we're saying is that my campaign is resident based. I mean, it's resident motivated. I'm doing this with support of a lot of people in my community and residents. So, like I said, I'm not a politician. I'm not part of the machine. For better or worse. I mean, some people, there are advantages and there are disadvantages. It depends how you look at it. But my voice and my run for office is coming from a place of, like you said, I am a resident. I see what's going on. I see what other residents are listing as their priorities. And I want to bring us all together and kind of move forward for the better. I really don't think it's like, hey, I want to run for office and it's one person. I do think it's definitely a group push. And that's probably what I'm most proud about with this campaign, is that I have support from different groups of just residents, not like the big voices in the party or this or that, or the machine. It's the actual people who live in the neighborhood and the business people who work in the neighborhood.
And on the subject of your campaign, what point did you start thinking, I could really run for office? I can really just go and declare, like, when did you start thinking about that?
So I was thinking about it about a year ago. I'm like, ooh, before COVID. I'm like, I was thinking, should I run? I don't know. I have a 7-year-old at the time. She just turned 8. It's definitely a family discussion. I mean, it's definitely, it's not something you do lightly. And when I was talking to other people in the neighborhood, I said, listen, I'm not going to do this unless I can do it well, unless I can do it systematically, unless I can do it with a clear vision, unless I do it with support. So it did take me a little while, not that I didn't have the passion, but it took me a little while to say, yes, I'm going to do it, because if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it 100%. So I think I decided definitely right before the summer started, when we were in COVID, like quarantine for a little bit there, that I was going to make this run.
Amazing. I love that. It's pretty crazy. Do you know?
It is. I mean, and with campaigning, it's hard. I mean, we're in COVID. It's not a regular time, right?
Right.
If you were campaigning now, I would be going, they say you would be going to meet people every night at one party or another gathering, but there are no gatherings. So it's a little difficult getting your message out when there are no gatherings to speak to people for the most part.
Leslie, when is your next thing where people can get online and listen to you speak or do a chat? Do you have something coming up?
No, yeah, I will double check. I believe it's not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday. We're doing a Zoom chat. Right. And then there are different political clubs in New York City have forums. And what they do is they ask all the candidates questions on their positions and their platform. So there are 1 or 2 of those coming up, I believe. I have to double check on the dates. But yeah, the Zoom, and that's another thing I'm finding. Social media is great. I mean, it's great anyway to get your message across. But during COVID, you can have one-on-one talks with anybody. People can ask you questions and you respond directly with them. I love that.
So cool.
Because it's unfiltered, right? You say what you mean and you say what you feel, and no one can spin that.
Yes. How fun.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun.
It's a great way to meet people through social media.
Yeah.
Also, that social media brings you right into like accessibility. How do you feel? Do you feel that it is really, I mean, obviously with social media and these forums where you can ask a candidate questions directly, do you feel that accessibility is something that needs to be enlarged and there needs to be more accessibility to the people in charge and the city council people so that they can really do what citizens want?
I do. I think social media can be a double-edged sword when it comes to politics. I do believe, and I have written about this too, that when I become councilwoman, I'm definitely going to put in every month. It's like a town hall or a let's chat. Like it could be on Zoom, or hopefully by that time it'll be in person. But just whatever, whatever's on your mind, please come to me with and talk so we can have a neighborhood discussion about it. On the flip side, I do think social media sometimes in politics, it could be used to the disadvantage of forwarding a proper agenda, because I think sometimes things that are said on social media can either be misconstrued, or things that are said on social media by one or two people can be blown up to something that might not be the prevailing thought, but everyone is so intent on responding to Twitter or this tweet or that tweet, or cancel culture. That's what I don't like about it. I don't want to get wrapped up in that at all. And I'm seeing that from our local politicians here in New York City. And I think it's a bad way of, not only is it a bad way of governing, I think it's not conducive to good long-term solutions, because then everything is a Band-Aid fix. You just want to fix what people are complaining about that on that particular moment, and you're not getting long-term solutions. So that's where I think there's definitely good and bad in social media, but I think it can definitely be a wonderful resource for reaching out and getting messages back and forth to the people that are governing.
Also, I did want to ask, you mentioned earlier, like you have an 8-year-old, right?
Yep. She was Christmas baby. So she just turned 8.
I saw the
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
How did that affect like you said that it was it was a family discussion.
Mm-hmm.
How did that affect how you felt, like how you wanted your daughter to grow up, stuff like that? Did that affect your choice for deciding to run?
It did. It was a pro and a con. So it was in both columns. I definitely want my daughter to see a strong female influence, or at least, mommy's doing something that's speaking for others, or lead by example. I think that's really, really important, especially when kids are young, right? Because maybe they don't understand the full scope of it, but they see that you're helping here, or you're talking about this issue. It could be a con. So I'll tell you a little story. Now that I'm doing this, you can imagine my schedule it's blown up. It's just exploded. I'm on a million Zooms, a week, which is great. And I love it. I was dropping off my daughter at school. This was in, I would say, the beginning of December, before break. And she said to her, one of the administrators of the school was talking to me. How's it going? How's everything going? And my daughter said, Mommy's on 2 or 3 Zoom calls a night. I never see her. So, and that's where then I was like, ooh, it hit home a bit, because then I felt bad that, here I am doing my Zoom calls. My husband is working and he's on his way home. And my poor then 7-year-old is like making her own mac and cheese in the microwave. Good luck. Because Bobby's working. So yeah, there's good and bad with it. And I had to take all of that into account. But I think we've actually now found a good balance. And by the way, Kai, COVID's actually helped a little with that, because now we're home, like my husband can work from home. I can work from home. We don't have to be out every minute of the day. So I think there is an extra support system at home that can help with children, or in this case, one child.
I completely agree with that. I mean, COVID has, for all the horrible things it's caused, don't get me wrong, like it has caused a lot of bad things, but it gave, I would never have started this magazine had COVID not happened.
Exactly.
I don't think it would ever have been brought to my attention. I don't think the idea would have ever come to me. So I think that there were some good things that came from it. There were some good things that came.
You know what, Kai? Absolutely. And you know what I'm hearing from people in the neighborhood? Because people are at home, or they're bored, or they have more time on their hands, unfortunately, that they're getting more involved in their local, in what goes on in their neighborhood. Something they didn't even pay attention to last year. All of a sudden they're like, wait, I want to go to that meeting. I want to go to that community board meeting where they're talking about this. So you are absolutely right. And they say that, out of this catastrophe, good things can come because there's silver linings. People find new passions.
Yes.
People press the restart button and they see, wow, you know what? I never had time to do this, and I really wanted to do this, and now I'm doing it and I love it. I think we're finding that throughout. Now, not to take away, obviously, people who have lost their jobs or have lost, a huge chunk of their regular living. But as far as direction, I think we can, even in city government, press the restart button and say, listen, this wasn't working. Now's the time to build it from the foundation up.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this. It's really amazing. And I do want to say, obviously, this is taped. So, yeah, like the people will see it after it's recorded. But for people that are curious about this, please go visit lesliefornyc.com, your website. We do have a large amount of our readers. I think nearly 75% are in New York. So please go check that out. Yeah, it really, I think.
Out of all the interviews I've done, I have to say this is so far my favorite by far.
Guys, I'm going to get a screen capture. I'm just going to do this with my phone.
Oh, yeah.
So
Let's put that up.
I'm going to post it. Okay, cool. I love it. Leslie, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Let me do one too. I want to do one too. You ready, guys?
Mm-hmm.
This is great. Okay. Got it.
So fun. All right, Leslie, have a wonderful day, and thank you again for your time.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure.